What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and it's time for another exceedingly long community feedback, where I ramble on at the actual responses to videos. This time we are talking about the ishgard Restoration. We posted a series of videos over a series of updates, and this one is going to mainly be talking on the one with the thumbnail that says fixed, where we talk about Yoshi P saying that they have made the change to the world visit system and they hotfixed that in, and I was excited about what that means for the fact that they can hotfix in changes and they can listen to the community in that real time, and that they can build multiple options, because I don't think they built that hotfix after hearing our response. I think they had plan A and plan B waiting. They looked at the data, they decided which plan should go out first. Okay, plan A makes sense with our numbers. We push it out, and then they can say, okay, but we'll keep plan B here in case the numbers we pulled end up no longer being accurate, right? Because the numbers were based on the number of active crafters on every server, and you ended up with people who came into crafting that weren't doing it otherwise. And so those numbers shifted, and their plan shifted along with it. Robin, overpopulated servers, such as Balmung and etc. Were being toxic on my server Goblin by making our firmament congested and taunting people. I'm glad Yoshi P fixed this. Now each server is responsible for their own ishgard restoration and can't block people from joining the fate on their own world. Better for the community. Each server is moving it around the same pace. So I've got a series of thoughts here, and so we're going to go ahead and jump through the first couple here, and then I'll kind of talk about it. Blake, excited to have a shot at seeing a fate before Wanderers completed my server. Would have been fine, but these Wanderers apparently played when I sleep and work. Better to use it for catch up than killing content. Frankly, they could also scale the completion bar based on server population. And then Runai still can't participate in concerted works because they are never active when I'm working and sleeping, so there's that too. So 3 very different thoughts on the very same content. There are people who definitely feel that they were being locked out by congestion, and Yoshi P and his team clearly agree, because they chose to make that no longer a thing. There are people that are that think, okay, it can be used, but only when it's not being used to keep me out. So not, I don't want it at all, but maybe as a catch-up mechanic. And then there are people who are saying, you know what, they did make this change, that doesn't totally fix it, because the concerted work is still 2 hours after the bar fills. The bar fills, at midnight. Now I get notified at midnight that at 2 a.m. my time, there's going to be a chance to do this 10-minute beta event or whatever, where I'm going to get to take a log, saw a log, hand a log. And I'm missing it anyway. And so now that I can't world visit, I can't go look for a server where there's one that is in an appropriate time zone for me. I think, that it would be interesting to see them instead put like a cooldown on a player. So if you partake in a fate, you can't do another one for 8 hours or 10 hours or 24 hours or whatever, to kind of encourage it to be a different set of players in each fate. And then if you do one on a different server, that's you. But that wasn't the technology that they had ready. And so from here, I can see all of these viewpoints. I've shared mine over a series of the videos, and it's interesting to see you guys. I do like that it's not scaled to server population. I do like that it's this finite thing that we can say, okay, for contribution to have been completed, there needed to be 100,000 tasks done. Those 100,000 tasks were a fixed number and got done by an average of 1,000 to 1,500 players on every server. Or whatever the math works out at. The numbers here are arbitrary. And those 1,500 people, if we wanted to, we could go put their name on a block that you could go in this basement and right click and scroll and see the 1,500 names. I like the idea that it's finite. It's what makes it feel real. I'm glad that they didn't have it adjust and scale, because it's what makes that scarce resource feels so neat in this case. I don't think that that's good in all cases. Housing, for example, is very dramatic because of that. But I do think that in this case, a little bit of drama is what makes this feel the scale that it does. It feels like I'm contributing to something larger than myself, that as a warrior of light, I have more of a humble role here instead of the savior of the realm. And they're like, we need your help right now. And I'm like, well, I got to log out. I'm going to come back in 10 hours. And they're like, that's fine. We'll wait. Like there's something kind of immersion breaking about you're in the middle of some quest, and because it's not timed, you log out and you go away for 2 weeks. You come back, you do side content, you run a couple dungeons, and you're like, oh, I should probably do that quest. And the guy's like, thank God you made it just in time. And it's like, there's something nice about this content that just charges on with or without me, that makes me feel like, wow, if I want to take part in that, I better get over there. You know, like seeing a movie at the theater before it's gone. And if you want to see it opening night, it's this huge ordeal. Like there's something really neat about that just brings a community together in a way that nothing else can. I don't want every piece of content to be like that, but I'm glad that this piece of content is like that. Now, the second half of these comments are pulled from my video that went out before the patch, where I felt that the gathering and crafting system and the descent system were gutted. They were stripped of the depth that they had before in the sake of making them accessible to the point, like an unnecessary point. There were certain aspects that feel like they're just removing skill bloat, but there were also aspects that, like, gathering is clicking 4 times and now it's clicking 1 time. 5 times, whatever, you know, depending on how many clicks there is on the node, or, you know, how many gathering attempts. But clicking 5 times versus clicking once, did that really need to be a thing? Like, we really need to worry about the fact that somebody was going to have to click a whole 100 times an hour or whatever, and now they're only clicking 25? Like, all right. Quietbeard, I understand how you feel, especially if you have put in the work and now everybody has it easier than you. But we should be happy that more people can join. It may tank the market a bit, but there are still people who are lazy and don't want to craft. All that will be my bread and butter sales. So one of the common comments was that I was in an ivory tower, lording my crafting over everybody else. And to make it clear, my crafters were not and still are not at cap. I have 1 or 2 crafters that I've kind of pushed up. And other than that, like, I've largely relied on Omni crafters when I need it. This is a lot like Ultimate content to me, where, like, just because I partake doesn't mean it's not worth protecting and it's not worth having. I don't want Ultimates to get nerfed. I don't want Savage gear to suddenly drop from Tomestones. I like that there are things that have to be done. I like that there's mounts tied behind extremes. I like that there is something for people that do more than me. I think because they did more than me, they deserve more reward than me. I also don't necessarily agree with the now it's easier as a justification just for not doing it. So, like, I think hard things deserve hard rewards, but the other side of that, and this may sound contradictory at first, so I'll try to, like, explain it. There's a parable in the Bible. Bryan and I don't talk a lot about faith and religion on the channel, so just stay with me on the parable. It has nothing to do, I'm not talking about faith here. So there's a parable in the Bible where they're talking about this, I think it's a winery owner, talking about this basically this farmer, and they go out at, let's say, 8 a.m. and they hire a farmhand for the day. And at 10 a.m., they realize this guy's not going to get everything done. And they hire another one. And at noon, they're like, oh my God, 2 is not enough. And they hire another one. And at 2 p.m., they hire another one. And at 4 p.m., an hour before the end of the workday, they hire another one. Now, at the end of the day, they're all there, and they've all worked different amounts. Each one was told, you will be paid a fair wage. And there was a standard wage for a day's worker in that time period. So, you know, let's say it's $100 for the day. That's what you're going to get paid to be this farmhand, and that's standard. And so the guy at 8 a.m. was promised that. So they line up in the order that they got there, and the guy starts with the guy at the end who did an hour of work. And he comes to him and he says, thank you so much for all your hard work today. And he gives him $100. Now every other guy is like, whoa, if he got $100, what am I going to get? And he goes to the guy who got there 2 hours before him, got there at 2 o'clock, and he gives him $100. Now that guy kind of looks weird at the 4 p.m. guy, and the other guys are like, well, they weren't even here till after lunch. What do I care? Still good news for me. He goes to the guy at noon, he gets $100. He goes to the guy at 10 a.m., he gets $100. He gets to the last guy and he gets $100. Now the last guy says, I was here the longest, I worked the most. And he says, was $100 not a fair day's wage? Why does them getting something different than what was agreed to make what you had any less fair? You agreed to work for $100, you worked for $100, you got $100. Why does what they got have anything to do with you? So I do think in that vein, the idea that I don't want people to have an easier time than me goes in the face of the things that, like, as a community, I think a 5.3 ARR levels story squish is a good thing. I think story skip potions and jump potions for the players that makes sense for is a good thing. I think catch-up gear and the way tomestones work in many ways is a good thing. I think that allowing people to get through the content, even though that means they did it in less time and less effort than me, is a good thing. But I still think there needs to be things that are hard. I still think there needs to be things worth earning. And so while I do agree that helping people level faster through old content is fair, so helping people speed up the 1 to 50 grind for their crafters and gatherers is something that probably was becoming prohibitively time intensive, I don't understand why we needed to get rid of the 70 to 80 grind. I don't understand why we needed to make unspoiled nodes so easy. I don't understand, especially current unspoiled nodes. Like, I don't understand if you want to go make the 1 to 50 unspoiled nodes no longer spoiled and say enough time has passed, they're now spoiled nodes. That's fine. And if next expansion you want to make the Heavensward one spoiled, that's fine. And if the one after, if you want to make everything but the current expansion super easy, go for it. But I don't understand why current content, why there isn't something aspirational left in the game. That kind of bums me out. So I want there to still be things hard. I really like that they keep the ultimates hard for that reason. The savages get easier, the extremes get easier, but the ultimates do not. And I like that there's something kept there for people that want that challenge and a way to denote them. It's not something that's necessary. You don't need to clear the ultimates. And so somebody getting to clear it and you not getting to clear it isn't the end of the world. So I just think that having some room for both is important. And that's where a lot of my frustration with this came from prior to the patch. And I feel the same way after the patch. I have leveled up. I think Alchemist was down at like level 50. And I logged in for 12 minutes the other day, and I leveled one of those crafters from 60 to 65 in 12 minutes. I've picked up like 50 or 60 levels across my crafters. I will cap my crafters out when I get time. So like they will, if 5.2 gets announced at the live letter and they're going to have all this cool stuff for capped crafters, I will cap all my crafters. I am days away, especially if I just pay for my ingredients instead of harvesting them myself. I am 10, maybe 12 million gil worth of collection of stuff away from being done in a matter of hours, because I can do the highest turn in for each of my levels and keep my guys geared. Probably 10 to 12 million gil, and I could have the rest of my crafters capped. So I think that's really the issue. And for people that don't have the money, I will tell you that gathering the ingredients is not that big of a deal either. So it'll be simply laziness and the fact that I do have that money that causes me to do that. I went out and gathered 500 of some ingredients. I gathered 200 of some ingredients just to make sure I understood what that side of things was like. I am trying to put together a video on this exact subject, both how to make money by doing it and also my thoughts on it, because I am a little bit frustrated still at how easy it is. Tensy, I see what you mean. It does not feel as rewarding as when it was too easy. Almost like slaying a giant in-game boss with a level 1 weapon and a single melee attack. That's my issue. If they had taken this same mindset and they had said, you know what? We looked at the numbers, only 4% of the population engages in Ultimate, and only 6% of the population engages in Savage. So we're going to go ahead and make all Savage content and all Ultimate content, even the current content, half as hard. I think people would be pissed. And that's really what I felt like. A lot of my issues was that that word endgame was the key here, right? ARR is no longer considered endgame. So making something from ARR achievable now, unless it was something that was behind the premise that it would be hard, like Ultimate. And nothing about crafting and gathering has ever been promised that it would remain hard. Some of the old relics have, and they therefore are still huge time grinds. But nothing in crafting and gathering was promised to remain hard. So if they want to go back and make it way easier, do it to it. Create a separate kind of leave or whatever. Do it to it. I mean, that's why we have those like 10 turn-in leaves now. Do it. But I don't understand why current endgame has to be that kind of level 1 single melee level of difficulty. Jason, everyone seems to have a lot of opinions on the matter, but we all know what the best ability is. Fishing. Strap on your straw hat, pull up a chair and a lemonade, and listen to the sea waves. The rest just doesn't matter. Fishing has been largely unaffected so far, good and bad. I hope that they have some positive impact this expansion. I've always loved fishing. I mean, gosh, I used to do fishing streams for hours on end. Back when I was leveling my fishing, I leveled my fishing like the slowest way possible. I just hard casted. I just literally just sat at points and just fished until I was at cap. Except for I did the last couple levels by leaves because I wanted to see what that was like, and I was like, this is stupid. I did like the last 8 levels in like 6 minutes or something. Yeah. So, but yeah, fishing's great. Gigging's neat. Not my favorite thing. It starts to feel a little bit like botany and mining with a timing aspect to it, but it's neat enough. It would be neat to see them have more use for fish, maybe desynth grants something unique or something in the future. Because right now, yeah, it's just fishing for the sake of it, which should be good enough. Especially if you go try to get all the achievements and stuff. You could just play this game to fish. Darkness. I'm actually excited to get into crafting and gathering now that the system really needed an update. Everything else has been changed, so it was to be expected. I mean, I agree that if you were going to make a change, now is the time. Doing it to get people into ishgard makes sense. They are saying that there is another half to their changes. And if that's the case, I hope that that's the half that makes me go, oh, it makes so much sense now. That's good. But while I will keep an open mind, because they deserve that, and they've proven time and time again that they deserve that, they've also proven several times that sometimes when they start a thought, they get so busy working that too much time passes, and they end up just never publishing the thought. And so we end up with partial systems. We end up with chocobo systems and squadron systems that feel incomplete. We end up with do you guys remember when they were going to do the duty recorder? And that's somewhat implemented. So some systems like the Bard's like music system gets more and more elaborate, and it's not a system that appeals to me. And yet they continue to support it. And for the people that care about that, that's awesome. Other systems seem to just get carried along like Glamour. They're like, well, here's more slots, and they never really make it better. It just becomes more. And some systems seem to get left by the wayside. And so my concern with this is that since I didn't like step 1, if we don't end up getting the final step, whatever that is, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many steps there are to get to the final thought, will anything less than the final thought, will 80%, 60%, 50% of the total thought be good? Right? Because I can tell you right now that whatever percentage we've gotten, I don't like. So if this is 10% of the total thought, I don't want to stop here. So we've got to at least get to substantial completion so that we can start to get to the point where you add the difficulty back in, which is what they've said is the intent. And we just don't have any concept of what that means. So until that comes out, yeah, I'm a little bit frustrated right now, like at a restaurant when your food takes forever to come out, and then it finally comes out and it's amazing and they're so sorry and it's free, and it turns into this great evening with your friends and family anyway, and like it becomes a good thing. But until then, I'm still in that waiting on my food type state, and I'm hungry and I'm frustrated. Cadmium Crows. That's a neat name. I would say now that I've played with it, the hardest part of the adjustment is getting used to steady hand 1 and 2 being gone. Yeah, the way, like the 100% chance of things and all that, like, especially when you go try to do the level, I should finish the comment here. But now that I've let them go, my only real gripe is the lack of specialist actions. I hope they can come up with some neat skills to give a specialist an edge without being bloated like it used to be. Yes, so we know that there's more coming. Hopefully that's this expansion's version of specialist and stuff. So like it would be neat to kind of see that expanded on. I will say that as I'm building out like macros and stuff, trying to hit like 300 collectability on like a level 60 character that's under geared. Or even is optimally geared, thanks to a certain generous guild member that crafted me a set of high qualities after a certain point. It's definitely a big shift, and it's a big adjustment. And I've been trying to build my own macros to make sure I'm understanding this. So I haven't gone and looked up any yet. I'm trying to get my own built, and then I'll go out and start looking at them a little more optimally. I think once I'm at cap, unless I just get frustrated. So right now I'm just mostly doing it on my own, and slowly my macros are getting more and more complex as the crafts require higher and higher amounts of craftsmanship and collectability or whatever. They're just requiring that I use more of the abilities. I can't just slap it until it finishes. It's definitely an adjustment. Yeah, I will say I've done a lot of collectibles. I mean, I did collectibles for like 5 hours the other night. I've done a lot of that. So like if their goal was just more playtime, but I for the fact that I often get confused of wanting this game to be WoW, I will say that a game that I played before that my playtime went up, but my enjoyment did not, and I ultimately ended up quitting it for Final Fantasy XIV, which is a better game in my opinion, is WoW. There's a reason I play 14 instead of WoW. And so if I really wanted to play WoW, it's still around. I can go play it. I have an active subscription. But the reason I choose to main 14 is because it's a better game. So I don't want playtime to be a measurement of fun because they're not the same thing. Greg, totally agree. I felt the same way when they made tanks brain dead easy to play, especially the experience buff to crafting will mean that literally no one can have all max. Literally everyone can have max 80 hand and land, which will effectively ruin the market. Yeah, I mean, the market is the symptom. And so I think sometimes when I talk about the market, like I did in the video, people assume that I'm just worried about the market. The market's just the symptom. There's a bigger problem at play. I'm not that worried about money. Like I have more money than I need already. And money is such an abstract concept in this game. It's more of a scorecard for hand and land than any real use, because like to people that want housing, having money doesn't fix the problem. We're out of houses. To glamour, well, you can only store so much. So eventually you won't need money anymore. So like in general, like there, if you don't want to try to get all the mounts and minions and stuff and only do it by paying people, there's a very finite use of money. And if you have 20, 30, 50 million and you're capable of making that once, you're capable of A, making it again, and B, you probably don't need to spend it on anything. So you just get to a point where you don't need money anymore. And I know it can feel like if you're somebody who's struggled to get over that first million several times and you just never get that push, that you don't believe you'll get there. But I have posted a whole bunch of guild guides and each one of them did work, does work. There is lots of ways to make money in this game. And once you have it, trust me, once you get to this end, it really is, at least within Final Fantasy, not so much in the real world, only money. Because there's no taxes or upkeep. Your character doesn't eat, doesn't drink. There are no property taxes or anything to maintain your house. Once you buy those things, once you buy gear for a character, that's good until there's more gear to buy. That can be a long time. Once you buy a house, that's it. You own that house as long as you keep logging in. So like it just gets to where like you don't need a continuous flow of money. So the market's not my only thing. But like I said the same complaint about tanks being easy. And then you still see tank queues. This was supposed to fix all that. And that was my concern. But what if it doesn't? Now the people who liked tanking before have to do less. So you've made it boring for me. So you better be there and tank with me. Like if you guys said, oh, why would tank if it's easier? Okay, it's easier. You better tank. Like you said you would do this. They made this change for you to make it feel like a melee DPS. Where are you guys at? Like, come on. You know? So like if I don't like asparagus and I have a party and you say, well, I'll come if you make asparagus, and I make asparagus and then you don't show up, now I'm stuck with something I don't like. And so that's where a lot of my frustration with this comes from, is we just have a history of the community asking for something, saying this is what will make them play, and then they don't live up to their end of the bargain. And all that does is leave the people who were already coming to the party with something they don't like. At least some of us. Some people like the change and we're already tanks and they like the new tank changes. Some crafters like it. But, you know, the question is, well, they already liked the old system. So if you had 100% of us or a large percentage of us already liking it, if that percentage goes down and the total number of players engaging doesn't go up, was it worth it? Rose, the system before was needlessly complicated. There was no need for a dozen different versions of stealth or 4 crafting skills that basically did the same thing. I think the changes are extremely positive and see very little downside. So with bloat, such as the stealth, good call. I don't think we need to be able to mount up and run full speed in stealth. That feels silly. Part of crafting is that it's a time sink. So removing the time starts to be like, well, then what is it? I just run out into nature and click something once? Cool. But I do agree the skill bloat, like the stealth thing was something that always kind of frustrated me. And I said I would have been willing to do a quest to combine those. Okay, you've gotten all your crafters to cap. Now they combine. Cool. I would have been willing to earn that. And same with crafting skills. I do think that there's things that aren't bloat, such as like cross crafting skills, where like your first crafter, if you choose to just max one out, which is a good way of doing things, sure. They don't have any of those cross skills, so they're suboptimal. So it's the hardest one to level is that first one. And once they're at cap, every other crafter, if they need something from that first crafter, they can have it. And they can not only have it, they can have it in high quality. You just go buy the raw ingredients, boom, high quality, boom, high quality, boom, high quality. And high quality is great. So then that second one's really easy. And that second one gets the benefit of every time they get to a cross-class seal from that first one, they get it. So that second one gets high quality ingredients some of the time, and they get cross-class abilities from the first one. So the second one's easier. And they get to share any gear you had left over because you maybe completed some of the, class crests along the way and all that. Maybe that class can even craft some gear for them. So now gear that you were using as normal quality, you can make yourself a high quality version. Very, very cool. Now the third one gets easier still. The fourth one gets easier still, and so on and so forth. So there's a reward for getting further and further towards that title, that feeling of omni crafting. And now that's removed. And now all the benefit goes to the very first one. So that doesn't make the second one feel more special, or the third one or the fourth one. So as I push all mine up, I found that it's easier for me to want to push them all to a similar level so that I can at least start to get armory space back than it is to feel the sense of completion of finishing one. And I think that's unfortunate. Joshua, the changes are a massive buff to hotbar space. And while I'm sad to see cross-class go, since it was such a major system in the game, it's probably for the best to standardize things. All in all, the craft calamity is a good thing. So the all in all, I say we don't know yet. So 5.x is a long cycle, and I want to know what happens in 6.x. Because if this whole thing is made okay by the Ishgardian Restoration, right, that's what makes this all palatable. I like the changes in the context of Ishgard. Then when we go into 6.x and we don't like Ishgard, are we still going to like it? Right? So the changes need to be good enough to stand on their own, because there won't always be an Ishgard to build. Button bloat is something, more buttons is not better. Mario is an incredibly hard game with a very small number of buttons, if you've ever tried to go back and beat an original Mario game. So I don't know that that's helpful, but things like cross-class and things like having to pick a desynth, things like that, where a player has to make a choice, or a player has benefited from past achievements of feats, if you will, I think are things that add depth and complexity to a system where my experience is different than yours because of my choices. And so when we meet up and we say, oh, I craft, do you craft? Wow, which desynth did you pick? Wow, I never even thought of those three. That's so interesting. Now it's like, oh, which ones do you pick? Oh, you also picked all of them? Yeah, me too. I just prefer something that has a little more agency, a little more choice, a little more not, you can have everything at the buffet. Doc, as someone getting into the game and thoroughly enjoying crafting, I absolutely hate this. I love the idea of getting skills from other classes and using them to enhance a different class, and now it seems I'm doing the same thing across all the classes. Very confusing, and for what it's worth, it seems impossible to high quality anything from 0 when leveling 0 to 50. The first thing I'd recommend is buying high quality ingredients if you have the money. Second I would recommend is don't worry so much about high quality ingredients that you're going broke. I think it's double the experience. Yeah, it's great if you can high quality it, but if not, just anything you add to that bar also adds the experience, and you get better. I also love the idea. So I think you largely just said everything I've already been saying, and I agree. I think somebody getting into it, that's interesting. I don't know. I think you and I agree, so let's go ahead and just move on. Matthew, I have to respectfully disagree with you here, Chris. While I do agree that these changes do make a number of things easier for gatherers and crafters, I've never heard it said that way, I feel it is simply streamlining a bar that was already lowered through the use of external resources. We're talking about things like Garland tools and the macro simulators. For example, if you talk about memorizing time nodes, it's been years since I had to memorize a node, like Final Fantasy XIV, clock, etc. As for crafting, the same issue is true. Myself and a lot of people use rotation generators from external sites. Yep. There is something a lot of MMOs face and have to deal with. If you make something challenging, someone will streamline and make it easier for you, whether you like it or not. So your choice is to embrace and incorporate the changes, or be stubborn and make people get it elsewhere and resent the company for the extra effort. WoW is a good study in this. With the add-on system allowing third-party mods, Blizz essentially outsourced the development of a lot of UI and quality life items and just incorporated what they saw was popular in the add-on community. Square Enix is doing much the same here. They see these resource sites and utilities essentially doing the same changes for them and trying to get ahead of it so they are not driving people to use these third-party sites and utilities. Those are my thoughts anyways. While I am sure some prices will drop across the board, I think you still have plenty of people who will stay out because it's either not their thing or they don't want to invest the time and money into it. So I think there's something more interesting than just saying, you were doing this task for me off platform, so I'll just remove the need for the task. I think for unspoiled nodes, for example, you could have it to where like once you gather an unspoiled node once, you have it tracked. Once you gather from that node, say 5 times, you have the timer. Once you gather from it 10 times, you can see which of the things you want to click on and so on. So I think you can have that like, okay, I used a website or I didn't use a website or whatever, and you kind of earn that depth instead of just simplifying it across the board. I think the act of having to go out to a website or communicate with people on third-party websites is a good thing. The fact that those tools are out there and that you have to go out and talk about it on Reddit or whatever to optimize is a good thing. It forces the community together instead of you just logging in and being like, well, the game doesn't ask me for anything anymore, so now I don't do anything. So, you know, I think that you're right. There are a lot of things that were already being done off-site. The fact that macros worked is a sign that the recipes were not relying heavily enough on the procs. Things like requiring excellent quality and stuff to cast certain abilities is something that the fact that those worked is because the thresholds they had for things being craftable, especially like high-end recipes, if they wanted to make, let's say, a raid equivalent set, they need to make those to where, like, even with the best in slot gear, at least at the time that content's relevant, you can do whatever you want once the content's 2 years old, 4 years old, whatever. At least while that content's relevant, make it to where somebody has to pay really intense attention, and even then, maybe there's a chance that they don't do it. And when they fail at it, all that does is drive the price up. Nobody's just eating that cost. You know, like you think when you go to the store and they have a buy one, get one free coupon that they're like, gosh darn it, we're giving that one away for free. It's been built into their pricing model. So they've just charged enough for the first one that they can afford to do that for that limited time, or that they can afford to take a loss in order to get you popularized with consuming their goods or services. So that's an educated decision. And it's the same thing here. So with a decenther, for example, if I have to decent 10 things to get one demi-materia, I'm not charging you for the 10th thing. I'm charging you for all 10. And that's why demi-materia was priced the way it was. There weren't that many decenthers, and it was hard to consistently get it. It's when I talk about my materia guide where I tell you how to go do Mutamex, it's a numbers game. It does not work if you just go buy a very small number of materia and go try it, because you are trusting the odds. Where it works is when I was going and buying hundreds of materia and eventually thousands of materia to do it, and I was sitting there for an hour or more at a time going click, 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 click. Because then a single failure or success didn't matter. I was making money by hitting the statistical norm, which I was already guaranteed because I knew what that norm was because I'd already done the math. So I think that, yeah, you have to account for that, and you don't want to let the third-party groups take control. But there is something to like the fact that Blizzard doesn't have to worry about developing a good UI. Their UI by default is not nearly as customizable as Square's, both games out of the box. But by the time you add add-ons, WoW can do things that Square can only dream of, because they have all these unpaid employees. Even if those employees are sponsored by Patreon or whatever else, that's not Blizzard's money. So I don't know. I do think there was a way to do this without just stripping it out. I do think there were other options instead of just being like, well, if they're just going to use this workaround, then let's just not do it at all. It's like, no, like embrace the workaround. So if they're going to go use Garland tools, okay, how do you make it less predictable than that? How do you make it to where Garland tools doesn't work? Or how do you make it to where, you know, I mean, maybe it's more of a cooldown, like it's a cooldown since the last time it was up. So every time it gets harvested, that's what dictates the next spawn. And then that way, they're constantly checking it. And then once they've unlocked it 5 times and they're given the timer, they're like, oh, thank God, I couldn't tell. You know? I don't know. I think there were definitely ways to make the system more deep instead of less deep if your concern was that people were just using off-platform systems. So on that note, guys, that is it for me. A chance to talk about those 2 videos. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Hopefully you guys appreciate these community feedbacks. If you don't like these kind of videos, I am a little concerned that you've made it to this far. But I will say that down in the corner, just be sure you let people know anytime you see them saying, man, I wish you had more comment videos like this or less comment videos like this. We use the little circle in the corner, or we're trying to get to where we're using it to start to denote the different kinds of content. So gray means it's just uncategorized, or not having one means it's uncategorized, but like yellow means community feedback, purple means podcast, and we're trying to get in that habit. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, it's me. I'm in Chris's office. He doesn't know it, but we've got other videos for you to check out right here. And we've got the vlog down there in the corner. Plus, we've got some contact information, and you can totally subscribe to the channel that way as well. So we hope you do. We hope to see you in our next video. But until then, take care.